Hey everybody, welcome to It's Fucking Ward, a Doof Media podcast series where we discuss Ward, Wildbow's return to the world of parahumans. My name is Matt Freeman, and this is my co-host Scott Daly. Scott, take over because my teeth are falling out, and I'm late for the final exam for the class that I forgot about.
All right, it's fucking meat. This is the weekly podcast where Matt and I eagerly dive into Wildbow's world of climactic emotions, if you know what I mean, breaking cycles and alien-based death powers as we analyze and interpret this ongoing web serial. This week, the end is here at last as the epilogue officially begins. We're covering chapters 20.11 and 20.E1. Victoria spent some time in her dream hassling her dead boyfriend and flirting with her dead girlfriend, but then is woken up by the humans, her plan having worked. Vicky abandons the Cape life in favor of getting a coffee with her not-dead girlfriend Lisa. Then, it's the first epilogue chapter as we see inside Chevalier's dream. Chevy is terrified of the cycle continuing, but with the help of Victoria and some eggs, finally manages to break it. Matt, what did you think of these two chapters?
Well, I have to say, this is just an incredibly satisfying ending so far. Mm-hmm. I mean, we get the last proper ending, the last proper chapter of the book, and then we're moving into epilogues, which is going to be a prolonged ending, which wraps everything up for us and hopefully gives us some different angles on what all of this means and leaves us with the feeling of closure. And so far, I'm enjoying the hell out of it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is an interesting episode to be in, and I think all of our episodes from here till the end of the show are going to be interesting because, the final conflict is resolved. The conceit of the book has revealed itself. We kind of talked about that last week, what we thought the conclusions and the final settled themes of the story were. And this is really just kind of wrapping things up, making some last final moves for Victoria to officially declare and make it clear that how changed she is and how the events of this book have changed her. It's just really satisfying. There's not a lot of analytical stuff to say, I think. Somehow we filled 18 pages worth, so we're going to say it. But it just felt different prepping for this one than it has the others.
Well, it's definitely like there's no more plot. So it's all moments and points of information, which we then just have to say like, okay, well, this is something to talk about, but it doesn't have implications beyond this moment. Like, okay, this is the end. So this is this. So it was difficult to prepare. It's just like a list of the things that happened. And I don't know. I think it'll be fine. I think it'll be a fun conversation. But it is very different than usual.
I think it's going to be a fun conversation because I think this is going to be an emotional conversation for us because this is just a satisfying couple of chapters. They just make you feel good.
For sure.
Ward has not always delivered making you feel good,
Yes. I admit I always hope that it would end with a happier tone. Not that it's over yet, but it's definitely it seems to be going in a more yes, we succeeded direction.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, quick announcement before we get into things. Scott, the end is coming.
Yeah, we had been getting some questions the last couple of weeks about what are we going to do for the end of the show. Unfortunately, or fortunately, we have some of our good friends over at Deep Impact that have set the standard for ending of shows way, way high, like super, super high.
Very high bar.
So we're starting to talk about what our final episode plans are going to be. We don't have anything officially planned yet. Basically, what we know right now is there will be an episode that covers the last chapters, and then there will be a episode after that that'll probably be a mailbag and also have us just like talking generally about our experience with the book as a whole instead of diving down into the specific chapters or the specific arcs. That's all we have planned right now. We were going to do more than that, and we will announce that as we go, but that's just generally what we have planned. So if you are wanting to ask us questions, don't submit them yet. It's too early, but start thinking about what kind of questions you would want for like a final Ward mailbag. And that's all we got planned that we can talk about right now. But we'll definitely going to be some fun stuff coming up. I think we have some things we're thinking about doing, but because we didn't have like 6 months in advance knowing when the end was going to be like Ruben and Elliot did, and because we're not as crazy and wonderful as they are, we're not going to do anything like a 24-hour live stream or anything like that.
Nothing approaching that.
No, we do want to have some fun stuff and celebrate the end of this book. But we'll be talking more about that over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. All right, Scott, let's get into chapter 20.11, the final chapter of the book proper.
This is it.
So we begin with Victoria trying and failing to read her phone, a sure sign that she's dreaming, of course. She interprets the message as Dean inviting her over, so she flies through the dream landscape of Brockton Bay, flying past Bank and It's Fucking Meat and probably Fuckley Bob's.
Yeah, I mean, she doesn't say it's there, but come on.
Yeah,
it's there.
It's got to be.
I really love this. I mean, there is something fitting here that this final chapter of the book begins exactly where the book started, right? The book opened with Victoria getting a text message from someone. The last chapter of the book begins with Victoria getting a text message from someone. Mm-hmm. It was her parents at first, or her mother at least. Now it's Dean, and finally we get our Dean moment that I think we've been waiting for her to deal with the Dean stuff for so many months, Matt.
Sure,
years. Some would say years. And we're finally here.
Yeah. I mean, the Dean through line has been this crucial thing to her character. It's been woven into all of the things that are going on with her. Yeah. And this is just exactly the closure that I think we needed for this. Totally. This interaction.
I do love the touches that you touched on, that it's making clear it's a dream. The phone messing up, the bank, and It's Fucking Meat being the best thing ever. I also love this little touch here where it says, even though it had been afternoon when I left the Pelham's lawn, it was evening when I arrived at the penthouse. So that's cool because it shows the dreamy nebulousness of it. But also, we get this understanding here very early that Victoria has been dreaming for a while and seeing other stuff. She's been doing other things. We're only getting to see a very small part of what Victoria's dream was. Perhaps you could argue, because we're seeing it, the most important parts.
Sure.
And it's also kind of unclear at first whether Victoria is aware that she's dreaming or not. She seems to point out the weirdness going around her, but there's no line specifically in this opening that says, oh, it's because it's a dream. This will, of course, be answered later, but I love that we start off here kind of with Victoria ahead of us. She understands the dream world now before she has this confrontation with Dean. She understands it, and we don't quite get it yet, and so she's ahead of us here.
Yeah. It actually reminds me a bit of the very few experiences I've had with lucid dreaming where you can kind of go in and out of awareness that you're dreaming. Like even the awareness that you're dreaming can slip into the frame of like you're dreaming about being aware that you're dreaming, but you're no longer aware that you're dreaming. And so it gives you this nice kind of liminal feeling of like, well, she's aware she's dreaming, but she's not really like awake. At least that's how I interpreted this.
Yeah, I think there's an argument to that for sure, because I mean there are, especially the temptation, like we'll talk about this Dean whole conversation in a bit, but like it starts off very lovey-dovey and then like she kind of almost slips into that multiple times as she's trying to, like, maybe the lucid part of her is trying to bring up the thing she needs to talk about, but the sleeping part of her really just wants to cuddle with her boyfriend.
Right.
Right. Yeah, I like that.
So Victoria flies up to Dean's apartment to try to spook him. And they just have the sweetest possible interaction in the universe. There's kind of samples like she tries to sneak up on him, but it doesn't work. He says, I can sense you even if it's dampened. There was moisture in my eyes. What if I love you really, really hard? Will it get through the dampening? You could try. And, there's really not a lot of this kind of thing in the story, for the obvious reason that this has been a story about this woman who lost this guy she loved, who she still loves, who she's still grieving even at this point years later. So the story is providing Victoria her closure. That's what this is. That's why we've been missing it. And it's amazing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This is kind of the moment, or one of the moments for Victoria. Losing Dean is this life-defining thing for her, And I think it is the one thing that she hasn't really come to terms with yet. We talked a lot about Victoria putting Dean up on this pedestal, and a lot of the book has been, I think, Victoria learning information that takes little chunks out of that pedestal, but she hasn't truly taken him off of it, not yet. And I think you're absolutely right that this is time for some closure at last.
Yeah. So it gradually becomes clear that Victoria does know that she's dreaming, at least as we talked about in fits and starts. But, you know, the fact that she's dreaming, like, it doesn't mean that this isn't also real in a sense, because this isn't just a dream of Gallant. This is a shard copy of Gallant. If this book has accomplished anything, it's gotten us used to the idea that person is a pretty wobbly concept.
Yeah.
This person is as much Dean as Wynn is the same person as Kid Wynn, or Ashley is the same person as Ashley Stillins, whatever.
Yeah. This is Dean, or it was Dean. It's the Dean that's a shard captor, technically a facsimile, but calling him Dean still feels right here. You know, like I really agree with that this, like, we had that whole discussion question about what is a person. This book has played fast and loose with these ideas and allowed you to really explore them. And I think that allows us to get to a place where I'm comfortable just saying this is Dean, enough of a version of Dean to where Victoria can have this conversation with this person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think in a minute we might get into the idea of whether or not Dean is aware that he is dead and that this is a dream. And I think that's actually somewhat ambiguous. But let's hold off on talking about that for a second, though.
Sure. I do love in this moment how Victoria goes over what she's been, what the dream has been for her. This is where it becomes very clear that not only does she know she's dreaming, but she's, like we said, been doing it for a while. We've only seen a portion, but she's fought 2 Endbringers, dealt with the Slaughterhouse 9, shopping trip with a girl I met at the hospital, an ex-fallen, a dude that's dating Vista, who might have you beat for looking good in armor, and a very troubled little girl who should not have been here. Then, you know, ran into the Undersiders and Skitter force-fed me spiders and centipedes at the bank.
Yeah.
I love this.
You know, what's cool about this that I didn't process it at the time. I didn't even process it when I reread it, but I think she names everyone except Ashley and Tristan, basically. And that's because Tristan is specifically said to be, like, unreachable. And Ashley, she sees in a minute here. I think
she hasn't seen him yet.
There's like this impression that Ashley has more control, and so she's not going to get sucked into somebody else's dream. You know, I don't know. Just that occurred to me. I was like, because I was wondering why aren't Ashley and Tristan here, and then I realized, like, well, there's kind of an explanation for that actually.
Yeah. So here's the part about this that is so interesting to me. She names Feta, Rain, Byron, and Kenzie, right? She ran into all of them in the dream, and they went on a shopping trip, or they were pulled into a dream that was reminiscent of the time they went for a shopping trip. It's not exactly clear, and it doesn't matter, right? Like, that's not exactly important. But here's what's great about this, and I think what starts to really help establish this idea that Dean is this stagnant entity, this unchanging thing, that is one of the things that death represents, the absence of change. Victoria doesn't refer to any of these people by name, right? Like, she describes them: a girl in the hospital, an ex-fallen, a dude that's dating Vista, and a very troubled little girl. Like, these are our main characters that she doesn't name any of them, because those names mean nothing to a 17-year-old frozen in time Dean. Because this Dean doesn't actually know Victoria, not who she is today, not the person she is now, not the things that she's been through, not the person that she's become. He knows the 16-year-old version of Victoria, and that's all he'll ever know. So, like, the most important people in Victoria's life, her found family in this group that was Breakthrough, are people that she can't even name to him because it means nothing to him.
I like that.
And I think that's so powerful.
Yeah, the only person she names is Vista, who he does know, but Vista is like 11 to him. Right. So the idea that there's some armored guy dating her is, you know, it should be jarring to him.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I want to segue into this idea that Dean is, like, semi-aware that this isn't really right. Like, there's this recurring beat where repeatedly he remarks that he's 17 in, like, an apologetic fashion. And, you know, Victoria is aware that she's dreaming mostly. I think he's partly aware that he's this stagnant, frozen copy. He'll say some things like 2011 is present tense, but then he sort of implicitly acknowledges at other points that that's not really the case.
Yeah. I really love that. And I think you're right that he's not clear about who he is and what's going on. And I think that's part of that is the confusion. Like he looks and he sees a Victoria that looks like the 16-year-old girl that he dated. Because what Victoria does say in this moment is that's when in this dream, she is the 16-year-old version of herself. But there's something different about her, right? Like, and I think he can tell that there's something different about her, and he doesn't understand. He doesn't get it. Like, he knows something's different. He knows she's changed, but he doesn't know what to do with that because he can't, because he's like, just like she could only see him as the teenage version of himself, but eventually gets over that. He can literally only see her as the 16-year-old version of herself. That's it. And a lot of this confusion and a lot of, I think, the recognition of his childishness is seeing a person that he kind of doesn't recognize in her.
Yeah. I mean, there are some moments in here where it seems like it's possible that he is aware that he's dead, and he's sort of almost thinking like maybe now Victoria's dead and she's going to come hang out with me in Deadland. Yeah. And that's kind of what he wants in a sense. I mean, he doesn't hope she's dead, but he doesn't want her to leave, obviously.
Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, like, imagine him just hanging out. I know this is probably not exactly how it happened, but imagine him just hanging out in this apartment for like 5 years, 6 years. I'm not sure how long it is actually. And then she shows up and it's like, oh, finally. Like, I think it's so great.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. So they go inside and they lie down on the couch together. Ghost Dean is horny, but Victoria has like 4 years of emotional processing and grief to unload on him. So
yeah. And can we talk about how incredible that is? Yeah. Like, this is Dean in the flesh, sort of.
Yeah.
They start off like cute and adorable and lovey. They hug each other. They tell each other how much they love each other. They touch. They get close. But she can't just do that. She can't just hide in that and not do anything, because she's learned things about him and she has to face them. And I love that. Like, there's like, you can see an earlier version of Victoria that just hides in this dream, in this happiness, and doesn't ever push any kind of issues with him.
Yeah.
That just, this is what she wanted and she's got it now, and I'm just gonna just hide in it forever.
Yeah.
But she doesn't.
Sure. Well, the earliest version of her, this was purely a kind of escape for her. Right. Actually, it was a kind of coping mechanism, even, that she would retreat into these wonderful feelings about the one person who never betrayed her, the one person who was always there for her. Mm-hmm. Basically a perfect guy, this perfect guy that she had. And if anything, the fact that he's dead is like a bonus, because he's unchangingly perfect. He can't let her down because he can't do anything. Mm-hmm. And then as the story went on, she learned more stuff. She learned that he was Cauldron. She learned that he probably knew about the Amy situation. And she changes. She's kind of able to move past him in small ways, like with Annalise. And so this is this is not going to be what it would have been at the start of the story.
100%. Yeah. It's so wonderful.
So first she asks him about the Amy situation, and he explains that, he did know what was up with her, but he figured that there would be time to approach the issue in a more gentle way. And then she asks why he didn't tell her that he was Cauldron, and he has a, pretty good excuse for that as well, since he would have been killed. But like he's hurt that she's asking these questions. He doesn't really understand. He doesn't really, it's not fun for him,
Yeah. I mean, like we were talking about earlier, I think this is a 17-year-old kid's version of heaven, or at least that's what he would think, like eternity with his hot as shit girlfriend, Netflix and chilling forever, But that's just not what Victoria is or what she wants anymore. And so that's really off-putting to him. Like, heaven, your girlfriend's not supposed to confront you about your past failings or talk about trust or walls coming down. This isn't how heaven works. What's going on here?
Wait a minute. This is hell.
Yeah. Right. And I love what he says here. I'm really thinking about us and the future. If I give the right answers, admit to my faults, do you leave and never come back? Like, he's thinking about their future together, where Victoria knows that there is none. That, like, even if the worst happens and they don't wake up from this dream and she does indeed die, I don't think her future would still be just chill with Dean in this apartment for eternity in Shard Heaven or whatever.
I think that's crucial to point out, because she leaves him not knowing whether she's going to wake up or not. She basically makes her decision. She could stay with him. They could find closeness and comfort together, but she just leaves. Like, she doesn't even have a plan. She's not going anywhere. She's just like, I can't. This isn't going to work for me as an anything. She just gets her answers and she leaves. I mean, she realizes that he hasn't grown up with her. She sees the immaturity in him, and she just kisses him on the forehead and she walks out.
Yeah, I love this moment. Not just that she sees the immaturity, but she sees the youth, and like, she sees how young he is. Like, like his skin, his smell. Like, he just she compares him to Annalise in this moment, right? Because Annalise is an adult. He's a man. And this 17, you're on the cusp of adulthood, but he's still a 17-year-old kid. And he still looks and smells and is a kid in every way. And I love that moment where she just looks at him and sees it for the first time. And this quote here, "You're perfect because you're in the past, unchanging. I can keep the best memories and gloss over the worst, but you're a teenager and you'll always be a teenager." And she's not anymore. And that's such a powerful, like, I think everyone in the world has known this to be true except for Victoria throughout this book. Like, I think like anyone would have told Victoria this, that like, look, like, your image of him is perfect because it cannot be corrupted by anything.
Yeah.
And you need to realize that. And this is her finally realizing it. And what I love about this is that, like, she doesn't really get satisfactory answers from him on Amy and on Cauldron, right? Like, his answers are just kind of like, sorry, I'm a kid.
I feel like they're fine. Like the answers are both just like, yeah, I mean, shit happens, kind of like he didn't realize that the Amy situation was going to ruin Victoria's life. And the Cauldron thing, he's just like, yeah, you know, I felt bad about it. Sorry. So, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So she's on the balcony and she encounters Swansong looking stylish as ever. And Swansong is really, really disappointed that she didn't get to watch Dean and Vicky fuck.
It's so wonderful. It's so fitting that she transitions from her former love interest to her present love interest. And then, of course, the book wraps up with her future love interest. It's really just perfect.
It is beautiful.
I'm joking, obviously. But can we talk about Swansong's look in the dream world a bit here? Because she has black makeup smeared around her eyes, almost like a blindfold. Her white hair was short with bits of black, like she'd wiped her fingers clear of the makeup in it. So she has the short white hair with flecks of black in it. I think we've talked a little bit about how Dean is both is and isn't Dean, but Swansong is different, right? Like, she has more command over this world than just about anyone else. And she has given herself a look here. And it is a look that's kind of a combination of the black and white in ways that would be very, very satisfying to Swansong.
Yes, absolutely. This seems like a sort of fully matured and realized form of Swansong that she has achieved by kind of fully committing to the final choice that she made in life. And basically, you know, ascending. Like you said, this is just the final form of her, and she gets to live in this world and kind of have her degree of mastery over it. And you know, it's not a terrible ending for her, actually. I would say. Yeah.
No. I mean, it's interesting because I think there are parts of it, and we'll get to this in a bit, but I think there are parts of it in which Victoria sees some of it as a bad ending, but every time she kind of addresses that, not specifically, but to like a roundabout way, Ashley kind of shoots it down and it's like, no, I'm fine with this.
Yeah, I think maybe what's positive about like everything that's hard for her about living in the dream world is just a way in which her life is not static, which is good for her. Like it's not just she's not just rotating between scenes. There's actually apparently some degree of dynamism to her existence here, like specifically talking about the other swan songs that are hunting her.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh, we got to talk about those. Is this the time where we talk about those?
Sure, we can talk about that now. I think it might come up again later, but
no, let's just wait till we get to it. I just love it. I just love it. I love how much Ashley talks about fucking though. it's just so delightful, and it reminds me of how much I've missed this character. This idea that Victoria's attenuation to emotions means that in this dream world she got really good fucking, just really good.
Yeah, it's great. So they talk about Swan Song's brief appearance in taking over Damsel's body, and Ashley says that she probably won't do that specific thing again, since she's already busy dealing with the shades of the other damsels who lurk in reflections around her constantly, which is just so metaphorical that I'm salivating.
Oh my God, it's so good. It's so fucking good. Like I can't handle how good. Like, so first of all, we get the confirmation that you were correct last week, Matt, that her coming forward was basically a result of Damsel attempting to kill Kenzie. So that's what your interpretation was, and that was spot on. That's Damsel, or Swan Song confirms that this week. And then I love how she says she's not going to do it anymore, right? Like, this is maybe the best sentence in the book.
Yeah.
Will you? I think I'd rather not, Ashley said. I wouldn't say I'm content, but I've always been a restless creature, a bird with twisted wings of annihilation. That is so fucking Ashley. It's so good. I love it.
Yeah, it's great. And like Victoria's kind of smiles at it. It's so good.
Yeah. And then as you saying, the shades of the other damsels around her is so wonderful. Like the dreams are a place where metaphor can literally become reality within the scope of the story, right?
Yeah.
And Swan Song being constantly hounded by the shades of her past, but having the utmost confidence that she can deal with them because, quote, I've had too many new experiences they can't relate to or reach. Now, like this is her past and past versions of herself hounding her, and they're just completely powerless against her. They can't do anything. They can't be effective against her because she's experienced too much. She's learned too much. She's grown too much.
Yeah.
And they're always going to be there. Like that is such a perfect encapsulation of everything, right? Like those things that happen to you, those versions of yourself are always going to be there. But eventually they get to a place where they're just reflections on glass that can't do anything to you.
Yeah. I mean, you see things in your life, you maybe even look in the mirror and see something in yourself that you recognize as being an old form of you that you no longer endorse. And maybe it stings for a second and then you just move on with your day. That's growing up, you know, and that's what she's talking about here, metaphorically, of course. So Victoria notes that she seems to have left like a weird shadow on the ground, which I think is supposed to be an example of this data corruption that she's been spreading, the pollution that she's been moving around the shard database throughout the dream.
Yeah, it's like this smudgy shadow. So we got all this like this data piling up that shows that it's working. Things are being corrupted. And I love, we learn here that Victoria was like attempting to try to pollute the more ugly parts of the data. And she never really explains how that mechanically works. You know, maybe specifically like she was trying to dream about certain bad things.
Or maybe she has some control over when she messes things up. And this was just like an example where she, I don't know, stood in one spot for too long and leaked out some of her pollution. I really have no idea. It didn't bother me, honestly. Like I just figured that if you're going to damage the shard's data, then yeah, focusing on like Endbringer fights would be a great way to ruin some of their best data, actually, because that's like the whole point of the Endbringer fights is to generate conflict.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice that it both it both gets rid of all the shitty dreams. So I think she specifically says so the people that are stuck here don't have to like relive all the awful experiences, but also just so happens to get rid of all the data that they care about the most.
Yeah.
It's really convenient.
Right. Isn't it kind of cool on a level that like they they were harvesting the conflict by creating these Inbringer fights where all these people were killed, and now the humans have robbed them of the learning, the value that they obtained from all those horrible things they did. So now it was just killing for no reason, really. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, huh. I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. Yeah.
So the pair talk about how the other members of Breakthrough are doing. Kinsey is apparently either hanging out with Gru or something. Reigns with Love Lost and Colt. Sveta is hard to reach. Tristan is unreachable due to the damage being done.
Yeah, and I love, Matt, this conversation regarding Kenzie, and I want to talk about this like forever. Because Victoria basically just vents. She's like, whatever I do, if I include her, if I leave her behind, it feels like it feels like a damning wrong choice. If she was the one thing I focused on, I think I'd still get it wrong, but she's not. And the end result feels like the worst of both worlds. I talked to her. She found someone on her wavelength, the darkness manipulator. Yeah. Let them meet. She's strong. She's determined. She'll find her way. But I worry. As do I, my friend. I think it's a perfect way. Like, I think we're going to get more Kenzie. I think there's going to be a Kenzie wrap up by the end of this book, most likely. But I like this as a way to like leave the parents of Kenzie, because like you're always going to worry. Like, you're like, that's the thing is like, we've made a joke about how this 99% of this book is just us being concerned about Kenzie. And that, like, to take the parent metaphor full circle, that is what being a parent is sometimes, right? Like, you're always worried about your kid. You're always worried that if she's doing if you're doing the right thing, if she's going the right way, you're always worried about that. You just have to trust, find people that she works well with. She's found Gru. Gru had an effect on her. Allow them to see each other, allow them to hang out. And hopefully that will help her find her way. And I like Ashley's kind of saying goodbye here in a way.
Yeah.
And I like how she's saying like, I'm worried about her too, and I might see her again, and I might see you again, but I think she'll be okay.
Yeah. Well, I love the juxtaposition of, she's strong, she's determined, she'll find her way, but I worry, as do I, my friend. And I think that's kind of the healthy attitude of a parent or of a mentor or whatever, is like, yeah, I have faith. She is strong. I have faith that she'll find her way. I still worry, obviously,
Yeah.
Like I don't pretend to have some kind of fanatical certainty that Kenzie will be fine, but
sure.
But I have faith because I love her and I believe in her. And I think that's a beautiful sentiment.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it goes back to that concept of trust, right? Like, you have to be able to extend trust to people sometimes.
Yeah.
Even when they haven't earned it, or they've screwed with it in the past, eventually you have to, because you will never, like she said, even if she was the one thing you focused on, it might not be enough. So at some point you're going to have to trust that she'll be able to find her way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it.
Yep.
So in the end, Matt, we don't get to see Tristan. And when I thought about this dream world stuff, I was like, oh, I bet we're going to get to see Tristan. And at least in this version of it, we didn't. And I don't like, it doesn't seem like Byron would have been able to either, right? From what Ashley says about him being disconnected from and too far away, Byron probably didn't get that closure either. How do you feel about that?
I think I agree with your interpretation. I wonder if, I do wonder if we might have some kind of interlude content with Tristan, but I don't think we will. If I had to predict, I would say no. I would say that storytelling, thematic wise, his death was supposed to be a death. Like this afterlife, it has all kinds of complicated metaphorical meanings to it. But when you have a character where their death was meant to just be a kind of, I don't know. I don't want to say Tristan's death was a failure, but if you compare it, for example, to what Ashley's death symbolized acceptance. Tristan's death symbolized a failure of acceptance. Just, I think that is what that is. And so, Tristan being unreachable here, I think works with this idea that he's not, he doesn't belong in this part of the story, I think.
Yeah, I get what you mean. I like that, and I generally agree with that. Yeah. I do like, part of me still wanted to see a final moment with him, and we might still get one. You don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right. You're right in that. I think that framing is correct, that Tristan died because he couldn't accept the things that he had done.
Yeah.
Byron was able to accept them before he was, actually.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I think getting like a beautiful scene of closure might cheapen that a little bit. That's not the right word, but I
contradict that maybe.
Yeah.
I think again, I think we probably won't get a Tristan chapter, but who knows? We'll see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do love this moment. This is the moment we talked about last week that I was waiting for, Matt. The moment where Victoria realizes that the humans didn't let them down, that the trust she put in them was rewarded. The moment that they're bringing them out, and it's a small moment, right? But it's so powerful. I drew in a breath. I felt dizzy when I realized what she was saying.
Yeah.
Ashley says very powerful people are being pulled out, and she's basically like, "Oh my God, that's what that means." And she's just like, she can't even say anything.
Yeah.
Like I was waiting. I was kind of in the back of my head, like, oh my God, this is gonna be such a big moment, and she's gonna utter some thesis defining statement of the whole story upon that realization. No, that's not really like her, and I don't think that's what human beings do. Just the overwhelming feeling of dizziness when you realize that is happening.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
I mean, clearly it's a huge moment for her, because from this moment on, she's like a different person. Like
yeah.
She's, as she'll say later, she's out. That was it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also, here's Ashley's goodbye. I think this is worth talking about, right? Because Ashley says, I suppose I'll see you again one day. Perhaps my contrarian sister will cede all ground, and I'll give you a call after. Perhaps she'll find a middle ground and accept some parts of me. Or maybe you'll die 60 years from now, and you'll be recorded in the annals of this place. It's not Valhalla. It's not hell either. Not quite. It's a last test, a question mark drawn out over hundreds or thousands of years. I think that's beautiful. Like, for other people, that might sound terrible. Like there is a part of me that thinks the idea of having your consciousness stuck in this dream world for hundreds or thousands of years is nightmarish, but that's not who Swansong is. And she sees this as a test. Like, this is here's the person I became, and I will, and this life living here, I say life in quotes, will just be my test. Have I earned this, and will I continue to earn this every day by staying true to the person I want to be, and not those shadows chasing behind me. And I love that moment where we look inside one of the windows and we see a headless corpse there.
Yeah.
Was that supposed to be her dad? That's kind of what I guessed, but
I kind of guessed it was, but I didn't feel like it matched perfectly, but it might have been.
No, it didn't match perfectly, but maybe that's just because I don't think he was sitting in a chair, and in this image he was like sitting in a chair. It didn't match perfectly, but I also like the idea of, in the dream, like, this original death is like placed on a pedestal on a throne of sorts.
Yeah. It could,
and she just like rolls her eyes at it and just walks on.
Yeah. I mean, it could, like, what's interesting is we don't really know what she got up to when she was, 5 minutes old, when she was working for Bonesaw directly, running around being part of the Slaughterhouse 9000. So maybe she killed people then. I'm not actually sure.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it's not like just a random person.
Yeah. It didn't feel like a random person. I agree with that.
Oh, it's Jay. Yeah.
But Jay
she blew Jay's head off.
But she blew his arm off first, and that guy had an arm. So I don't know. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I think that works. I think that works really well, because that was one she felt very, very bad about, and she's almost indifferent to being shown it now. She just doesn't care anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
Not because she has regrets it, but because it's like she sees it as a test, as like a trying to drag her back down type of thing. and she won't accept that.
It is cool to see this because, like, I'm remembering Snag's last moments where I regrettably I forget the exact language, but it was like, then dreams of a new kind came and he realized that he would never be free of them or something. And it's like this it was just wonderful, horrible moment of like, yep, you're being sucked into this afterlife shard hell. But Ashley just has a different attitude about it, and she fights for control here, and she actually kind of makes it hers. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, totally. I love it. And I also love, Matt, how this conversation ends before Victoria wakes up, because Victoria almost like falls into old patterns again here, where she's like she realized she's waking up and she's like, oh shit, I gotta solve problems. What was going on there? What were the Titans digging? What was going on with that? And Ashley's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't help you. I don't know what that is. It's almost like she's falling into old habits where like, here's more problems that have to solve, more things we have to do. Go. And then Ashley's just like, hey, be happy. I do believe we won. Like, and it's just this very simple, wonderful statement. It's just like, hey, just take a breath and enjoy this thing before you dive into the next thing. And that ends up being the big like motif of the Chevalier chapter. So I really liked seeing it here.
Yeah, it's great. So Victoria is awakened, feeling pretty sluggish by this woman who we never get her name. We don't know who she is, but of course Vicky ignores the recommendation to rest for 20 minutes before standing. The woman seems a little annoyed that Victoria is jetting off immediately, but Vicky gives her her hood ornament as a consolation. And then she lets the rest of the bloody, destroyed costume drop into the crack in the earth, letting go of Antares. And she also tells Fragile One, hey, there's not going to be as much power use going forward, so hope you're okay with that.
Yeah, I love this so much. The giving away and then ultimately throwing away of the costume is so perfect, especially because it's done into the cracks, like it's into Shard World, right? Like it's like, have your cape stuff back, like have your Antares, like this is not me anymore. Like I wouldn't be giving them any more of me, not like I had. Like she has changed and she's not going to be the same person. And Antares, this shining bright star in the sky, is not how she's going to run her life anymore. I love it. And yeah, Victoria, as she's talking to Fragile One, like tests her out, right? And the force field extends no further than her clothes and makes no movements that are out of her control. And we'll see in the next chapter that Chevalier sees her shadow as being perfectly aligned. So like that's pretty good confirmation that like her shard isn't going to fight her on these decisions.
Yeah,
right?
That's how I interpret it. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe we're seeing this as kind of like the goal of symbiosis between the two species, like where they can coexist without like, because like she could maybe just never use her power again, and her shard maybe would be okay with it in this situation, which is not how it goes for anyone else.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I think I'm not entirely clear on whether she leaves the force field on or not, but I think the point is that either way, I think it's fine either way. Like I think my headcanon is that she leaves her force field on here, and now her force field is the same as it was before all of her terrible traumas. It's just a skin tight force field that keeps her safe. She's clearly using her flight here.
Sure.
So obviously I think like I don't even interpret this as like, oh yeah, I'm not going to use my powers anymore. I think it's just I'm not going to use my powers for fighting anymore.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, she definitely leaves it on as she's flying through the air. So yeah. I don't know like if that means she's just going to leave it on forever, and it's probably never going to pop because she's never going to put herself in violent situations where she can get hit like that. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you that I do not see Victoria just like not ever using her powers anymore.
Yeah.
Like it'd be very hard to tell me that I could fly and then be like, nah.
Yeah, you
like,
gotta drive.
because I don't want to fight crime anymore. It doesn't mean I don't want to go fucking flying through the city.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's I mean, I'm going to double down on that because at the start of the story, she wasn't using her powers. And that was because they reminded her of all these terrible things.
Right.
And I think now, like, she wasn't even flying between places when she could have. She was walking and you know, stuff like that. So now she's going to use her powers for convenience, but she's not going to fight. I think that's.
Yeah. I mean, what about the idea of using your powers for good? And I don't mean in like being a hero kind of way. I mean in non-conflict kind of ways. You know, like there's so many incredible powers, and just because of the shard shit, they always resorted to just being used to fight each other and to do damage and to destroy things.
Yeah.
What if there's a way to use these incredible gifts in non-conflict oriented ways? And maybe that's what I won't be giving them any more of me, not like I had. Like, I'm still going to use these things. I'm still going to use these gifts, but I'm not going to use them the way in which they wanted me to.
I mean, this is a fascinating idea because like they've won maybe not just against Fortuna, but against the shards and the shards' expectation that like you're gonna fight and you're gonna give us all this conflict. Like maybe maybe the conflict drive itself will be diminished or gone now for everyone. And you know, maybe triggers will no longer. If triggers continue to happen, maybe they won't seek out the most vulnerable and the most likely to use the powers. Maybe they will operate by some other means. I mean, it's fun to think about. All of this is super conjecture-y and sort of based on this idea of where we think the themes point. But I do like to imagine that this might be like the positive future.
Yeah, me too.
Cool.
And I think Victoria's first flight after the dream reflects kind of this conversation because she talks specifically about how this reminds her of the first time she ever flew. And because she's flying through the city with endless possibilities ahead of her. And that's what they have now. They have all these new possibilities. And she finds it terrifying because, like an entire world of possibility where you'd have no idea what's going to happen can be really fucking scary because you have no idea what's going to happen. But I think it's hopeful at the same time too. Like there's so many different things that they could do.
Well, I think even here, she's already decided that she's not going to be a superhero anymore.
Right.
So that's part of what she means with the possibilities is like, well, it's going to be different and it's going to be scary and it's going to be difficult. So
yeah.
So Victoria flies to the Cauldron base and she locates the room where all the Undersider adjacent folks are in stasis. And at this point, I want to just point out kind of from here going forward, the general lack of masks and the lack of costumes, which I think just becomes really important as we go on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely true. And we'll circle back around to this in the next chapter when it becomes like crazy, like that just everyone is in a room together and everyone's referred to by first names almost. But yeah, I mean, I think this is representative of a shift in the status quo as far as capes are concerned. What is a cape going to look like after this? I don't think it's going to be the same.
Yeah.
And I think we're hinting towards that a lot.
Yep. So Tattletale asks how she should punish them for making this decision, the kids, against her orders. And Victoria says, you can just cry, showing them how much it's actually affected you.
Yeah. And I love that Victoria, as she comes up with this idea, thinks about Ashley. When she says it, right? So she's like channeling like kind of a what would Swansong do here? Her resurrected friend who has ascended to Shard Heaven. Am I saying that Swansong is Jesus? Yes, I am. But this moment is great. I'm not much of a crier, she said. It really unnerved them probably for just that reason, but they're resistant to bullshit. So, and then she follows it up with, I could really actually cry. Don't worry about that. And that's a moment of vulnerability from Lisa that we just don't see. Like, I'm not much of a crier is a very Lisa thing to say. Like, it's like, I'm not much of a crier. And Victoria jumps off of that and is like, yeah, well, that's why it would work. But they maybe would sniff out the bullshit because obviously you'd be bullshitting. And she's like, no. Like, I'm not much of a crier, but I could actually cry here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really great. And you believe it too, because we know how much she cares about Chicken Little specifically.
Yeah.
Who's the one she's looking at when she says that. So.
Yes. It's beautiful. I mean, like, it's such like Tattletale has gone through so much in this book, and I love that the one through line is taking care of this kid. And from the beginning to the end, it's taking care of this kid. It's making sure this kid is safe. This legacy of her best friend, and she's changed a whole lot. But that is the one truth, and I think that maybe even loving this kid led to some of this change.
Yeah, I think you're right. So Tattletale says that she has been intentionally checked out. She doesn't know any of the current events. She's just hanging out, which I think ties into this idea that it's not just Victoria who is just done with this shit.
Yeah, totally. Lisa is right there with her. And I love, I'm jumping ahead, but the conversation where they're trying to figure out what the hell they do now is such a great conversation. I love that. But yeah, like these two people that were always on opposite sides of things and butted heads, but worked together throughout it all, both are just like, yeah, we're done. We're done now.
Yeah. I just have to read the ending of this chapter because, I mean, we do see more of this conversation later, but I found this so incredibly satisfying that I would have been fine if this were just the end of it, where Vicky invites her to go get some coffee. She says, "We're not friends, Vicky." "Sure," I told her, rolling my eyes. "So as not friends, do you want to dream up punishments for the kids over coffee? I'm ravenous." She looked down at the cup she was already holding, then pitched it into the garbage. Rachel clutched this together, and it's so strong it makes my eyes hurt. Fine, I said, with a note of easy humor and a lack of guard I hadn't let myself feel in a long, long time. Like I could have laughed as I said it. And like I said, that would have been a perfectly good ending for Victoria's character. I'm happy we get more in the next chapter, but like I just had like this smile as this chapter ended. So
yeah, I mean, what I think it's perfect too. And I mean, this is the end of the book, if we consider the book everything before the epilogue.
Yeah.
And you're right that we see more of this conversation. We see more of Victoria. But I wonder if this is the end of us being in Victoria's head. If this is the last line we get from the Victoria point of view, the last line we get from Victoria's inner monologue, with a note of easy humor and lack of guard I hadn't let myself feel in a long, long time. Like I could have laughed as I said it. And then we exit Victoria's head and we don't get to ride in that head anymore. That would feel like a very satisfying thing. And I don't know. I mean, we might have an epilogue chapter from her point of view again. We might not. But I think it feels like we're saying goodbye to that point of view. And while, yes, we get to see her and see the next chapter is definitely still about what Victoria is coming to realize, but I don't think there's a big realization on Victoria. It's more Victoria helping Chevalier come to a realization. So it's less about her and more about him.
Yes.
And I think that helps me feel like, okay, we're saying goodbye to her. We're moving further away from her. And now we're seeing the things she's done ripple out to these other characters.
Yeah, I think we're just getting clarity on the meaning of some of the actions and things that she said in this chapter, which we really could have, I think we already put it together, but yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we move on into the epilogue, the first epilogue, 20.E1. Scott, we're in the epilogues.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's really ending.
It is. Life has been so crazy lately, like with this whole, pandemic, that I don't know if it, like, we've been on this arc for like a month and a half now, longer, I think. This is part 7, so that means 7 weeks.
Right.
So, like, I've known that this has been coming for a while.
Right.
And I don't know if it had hit me until, like, I sat down to read an epilogue, which doesn't actually say epilogue on it. That's something we should note. Like,
True.
This could just be, no, it's just interlude E.
True.
1.
Could be.
It's not. Everything about this feels like epilogue.
Right.
But yeah, this is it. We're done with the book proper. We're on to the epilogues now. And it's been this crazy 2.5 year long journey, and now it's finally hitting me that this is it. We're coming to an end.
Yeah, like you said, it's difficult to kind of process this kind of thing at this particular moment in time because there's just so much else going on. But yeah, it's weird. It's a weird feeling.
Yeah, and we have to note that the structure of this epilogue seems a little different, at least from Worm, right?
Yeah.
Worm ended, and then there was an epilogue arc that was multiple chapters, and there are going to be more chapters in this epilogue. I think E1 tends to indicate that, but it is still attached to arc 20 last. This is not epilogue arc chapter 1. This is arc 20 last chapter E1.
Right.
So I mean, Ward's structure has generally been different from Worm in a lot of ways, and I'm not even talking about like narrative structure. I'm just like the structuring of the chapters and the arcs have been different. I wonder though if there is, we don't have a large sample size to work with quite yet, but if there is a reason why these epilogues have been attached to the arc in this kind of way.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's too soon to say, but that's definitely something I noticed. I was expecting it to be, like you said, arc 21 something. Arc 21 epilogue name, but no, it is different. But like you said, there have been enough deviations from the structure of Worm that I'm not able to really just say like, oh, this is really unusual. It's like, yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, sometimes it's different.
Yeah, and it's a choice, and I'm really interested to see, and that's one of the things I want us to pay attention to. However many chapters there end up being in this epilogue, if it's 3 or 5 or 8, 10, I don't know. But if we'll see if there's a reason why, maybe the content of these chapters just fits better inside this arc, like in a way that I don't know. Yeah, we'll have to see.
Yeah. So we move on into Chevalier's point of view. So Chevalier hangs upside down in the crashed car where he had his trigger event, and he laments the fact that the shards didn't bother storing an accurate memory of his brother's face. He thinks of his brother as so terribly important to him and a mere prop to his power.
You get so used to being in Victoria's head, a person that has become so one with her shard that they literally are in love with each other now, that you forget how this powers cape dynamic usually works.
Yeah.
People as props and tools, a means to an end and nothing more. And I think very early in this epilogue, you're like, oh yeah, that was the relationship. That's how it works. It doesn't give a shit about your brother. This thing that defined your life, this reason why you went forward with your, with everything that got you originally into trouble and led you to the Protectorate eventually, and then to the Wardens, the thing that started you on your path, they don't give a shit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting for him specifically. You could really draw a line between the Snatchers, these horrible, monstrous kidnappers who come and grab his brother, and the Shards, who are, in a sense, doing the same thing. They grab kids and they use the kids for their own horrible ends. Yeah. And the shards are fucking awful. It's funny because the idea that the shards are fucking awful has been the norm in the fandom, but Victoria's sort of more positive relationship with her shard has caused us to have a bit of a more nuanced feeling about them. But yeah, as far as we know, that's like the only shard that's remotely nice. So
Right. Yeah. I mean, it is very easy to just kind of see this beautiful relationship between Victoria and Fragile One and just be like, shards, are they that bad?
Right.
Yes.
Right. You're forgetting about all of the other ones.
Yeah. Literally every single other one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things I really like about this chapter and a motif that I think we can connect across both of these dream chapters we've seen so far is this idea that the past just doesn't really have any answers for you, at least not satisfying ones. Victoria gets nothing out of Dean really, except a realization that she shouldn't be looking for anything out of him because there's just nothing there. And here Chevalier is sitting in this experience, reliving his trigger event, and he basically says to himself, there's nothing to learn here. There's nothing to gain here. There's nothing. This is, I can't get anything from this. And it's almost as if to say that our past defines our problems, defines who we are, but it can't solve those problems. For that, we need the future, a future. We need time. And I think the idea of time is a motif that's repeated several times by Victoria throughout this chapter. That we need time to figure this stuff out. We need a future to allow ourselves to have a road to walk down.
I think that's really awesome. Yeah, I think that's spot on. His brother's face is not stored properly. His parents' faces are like flat because they're just taken from photographs. And it's just all these indications that he wanted some kind of solace, some kind of maybe feeling of belonging and connection from this memory and from this dream, and realized it's not going to give it to him. He's not going to get any of that stuff from the past, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he tries to talk to his brother, and as the memory of this trigger event plays itself out. I think one interesting thing about this scene, and tell me if you have a different interpretation, is that Chevalier actually has misremembered his trigger event for his whole life, or he's had some kind of amnesia regarding it up till this point, because as he's going through the dream memory, he realizes that he was actually awake when the Snatchers came. He actually fought them.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's not how I read it, and now I just have no idea who is more right. I'd have to go back and read it. My read was that this is almost like a metaphorical and a literal awakening of sorts, that he was unconscious when it happened, but now this newly wise and changed Chevalier isn't asleep anymore. He's awake, both literally and metaphorically. Like, he knows what's up. He knows what's up now. I like yours too, because I think that is an interesting thing to how the past is distorted through our memories, and how things are changed and warped to be what we wanted them to be, not what they actually are. So I like that interpretation too, but that's not the one I had when I read it.
Yeah, I think the main line that makes me pretty sure of this is when the Snatchers are like reaching for him, and he thinks he hadn't remembered this part. And just the phrasing of "he hadn't remembered this part" tells me, well, it happened. He just forgot about it, or he blocked it out, or what have you.
Yeah.
So, or maybe he had brain damage. I don't know. Yeah.
I still think the metaphorical awakening could work under that interpretation still.
Yeah. Well, he's awakening. I mean, you could say he's awakening to the reality of what actually happened that he's suppressed all these years.
Yeah.
As well as everything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do love the conversation he attempts to have with his brother, though. Like, this is kind of, I think, the statement of the chapter right here, and the statement of the wardens. They asked me if I'd put my life on the line and trust the people we've been protecting to wake us up. I realized all at once that I'd made a mistake. Ever since the world ended, I've been telling myself we need to slay these demons, face down these monsters, stave off this war for another few months. If everything turned out all right in the end, then they'd forgive us for being elsewhere for the first few years. And I love this so much, Matt. Like, Chevalier has basically been a non-entity in this book, right? Like, he's been around, and we've seen him in fights, like in the background or in meetings or giving speeches, but we spent almost zero time with him as a character, as a person. And yet, in this moment, just look how easily his character arc that's been just running in the background kind of slots into the themes of this book. Everything that he's talking about here, like, fits into some of the things that we've been talking about the whole book. Like, Chevy, like, woke up after Gold Morning and was like, all right, we gotta go. Like, this is our new start, and we have to start the new start good. So we got to fix all our problems. Got to go out there and fix them, slay the demons, fix the problems, go, 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 go. And then once we do that, everything will be okay forever, and everyone will love us again, and it'll be fine. And of course, if this book has taught us anything, it's that idea is just wrong. It's just wrong. It never works that way. That's just not the way it works. That's not the way it worked literally in the story. That's not the way it works when you're trying to get over terrible shit that's happened to you, when you're trying to recover, when you're trying to move forward. That's never the way it works. And this is the moment that he finally realizes that. Yeah,
it really makes the whole conceit of the death song, you know, the sleep, the dreaming, it makes it land so hard here to have it connect for this character. Like, it already made sense for Victoria and Victoria's arc and Victoria's struggles and what was going on with her character, but to have it connect in a related but slightly distinct way for Chevalier, you really get to kind of see how this idea reflects through and refracts through these different characters. I think it's awesome.
Yeah. This idea that they looked at this new world, this world of second chances, this world of new opportunities, and they kind of just fell right back into old habits. And we're like, okay, now we have to prove that we should exist to these people, and the only way we can do that is by solving all their problems for them. Without their input, and we'll ask forgiveness later.
Yeah.
We'll just go and do it. And that's what they did. And that's, I mean, we've talked about how the Wardens, this big, powerful, proto-protectorate organization, has just kind of been a non-existent entity in the story. And it's because that's what they were doing, because Chevalier, one of the people in charge of this organization, was leading people towards that choice to just go out there and solve all the problems and not interact with any of the people, not be seen on the streets, not do anything, just go solve the problems alone without any help.
Right. I mean, I think people, we've noted this as we went along, this idea that the anti-parahuman sentiment was able to fester to the degree that it did, because there is this pervasive sense throughout the story that just like the Wardens are not here, like the top people, like they're just off somewhere. And it was plot wise it worked out because Victoria, who is I'm not insulting her and calling her like more of a mid-tier cape, ended up being central to all of the events in the story, because all of the high-end capes were off fighting like some kind of dragon or whatever somewhere else.
Right. Why the fuck is Victoria Dallin on TV speaking on behalf of capes? I love her. She's great. Who is she?
Right.
Nobody knows who she is.
Her and her team of misfits, right?
Right. Why is it Chevalier standing on a stage talking to the humans, telling them about what the plans from now on? Why, like, they totally abandoned that side of the equation to go do important things. No one's denying they're important, but as will be said later in this chapter, there is a balance.
Yeah. Yep. So Chevalier's trigger vision, like the actual trigger vision itself, not just the event, really is, I think, remarkable. And for me, it really served as a kind of final piece of explanation that I didn't know that I had been looking for. So we learned from his trigger vision that the orbit of the entity's planet intersects a kind of natural space-time anomaly, that's like a natural hole between dimensions, possibly something very subtle, but natural selection picks out the worms on the planet with any accidental ability to take advantage of this anomaly. And then, of course, natural selection runs away with this capability, as natural selection tends to do. And we end up with entities that can control this power, can leverage it for their own ends. And so we understand how the entities got their fundamental shard bullshit interdimensional abilities. And that was really cool. And then, of course, we understand, like, okay, well, Chevalier's power relates back to the very fundamental nature of, pushing things between parallel worlds, because that's where his power comes from. That may also be why he has this like shard vision power, actually, because his power is so incredibly old that it's like prehistoric for the shards. Yeah.
It's definitely neat information, and I think you get more into that kind of nerdy inner workings of shard shit than I do, which is like totally cool. I'm not knocking that at all. I just don't know what to say about it. I'm just like, yeah, it definitely answered questions of like, how does a creature develop multidimensional abilities? How would that happen? Well, here you go. Solved.
Yeah. Solved in a way that's just like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Cool.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Cool. Yeah. It is so funny that here at the end of this second book, like, there's still mysteries to be solved. And I mean, about who the entities are, what they are, why they are. And I mean, we'll even leave this chapter with some of those mysteries still being out there. So.
Sure. Yeah. So he then tries to ask a question of the entities. And after re-experiencing his vigilante days as relentless, brutalizing gangsters, he eventually gets a garbled response from the ghost of Alexandria, which basically just goes communication, sending a message, answers.
Yeah, which is not like helpful at all.
Yeah.
And I love that, like, he's like, oh, this came from Alexandria, and she's actually just pulling quotes from things she said.
Yeah.
She's not actually like talking to him. She's just like pulling quotes, and he notes that like every quote she's pulling from here is a moment she lied to me. So I don't know if I want to believe this, but actually we learn later in the chapter that she's right there. It's really interesting, though, because Alexandria is like, she says, yes, Alexandria, like, yes, she's here. But as we already said, she's talking through fragmented memories. She's broken, kind of. And we see that she has the pretender, like, pink eyes on her here. So, like, maybe some screwy shit happened when Pretender like subsumed her body and like was Alexandria forever until he died. That fucked up the storage, and now they're like two people, but also still independent, and they have separate memory, and it's just screwy and weird, right?
Yeah, it is really interesting that as much agency as Swansong appears to have in this space, Alexandria is very much limited to being able to kind of play with the existing tape, not just speak her mind here.
Yeah, and I think that reflects, we were talking about Ashley's death versus Tristan's death, and now we can say, well, what about Ashley's death versus Alexandria's death?
Yeah.
Like how the book treats them in their quote unquote afterlife seems to indicate something about, what kind of people they were. Alexandria, not great.
Yeah, in the end, not great. So Chevalier then kind of jumps around a bit. He jumps to the Behemoth fight. He then jumps past that to a later point in the fight against Scion. It's very kind of like emotionally evocative, and it just very kind of more dreamlike through this period of the chapter. And he begins to despair at the cyclic nature of it all, the constant struggle that never ends and never gets better.
Yeah, this is wonderful. This horrible but accurate idea that like he's gotten so used to handling pain and anger and betrayal and despair and the compromise. He's gotten so used to handling these things individually and piecemeal that he believes he can do it. But just the fact that it's a cycle and it never ends is just almost too much, that it's just never stopping. And this wonderful quote that he could wake up, find everything back at square one, and be trapped in the loop. Shock, struggling to find his footing, angry, bargaining, despairing, compromising, and finally finding fleeting peace. This is his greatest fear, right? Like this is the greatest, that they're going to wake up and it's just going to go again. It's just going to be like After Gold Morning. It's just going to be, okay, we're going to get up and then we're going to go out there. We're going to start solving the problems, and we might solve them temporarily, but it's just going to happen again and again and again. And oh, it's devastating. And what I love is that later in the chapter, that almost exactly happens. Like that, he starts to go down that path again. We see it happening. And then our protagonist says one word or two words, and it changes everything.
Yeah, it is great. I mean, we'll talk about that moment when it happens, but just walking him almost, almost not under his own volition, just like this is who he is. He is the guy who always goes, steps forward and faces the demons and never gives up. And so of course he's gonna get back into it as soon as he can. And luckily he runs into Victoria.
Yeah.
So Chevalier wakes up beside Hannah, and he thinks sadly about how their relationship never worked out.
Is it not Hannah?
Hannah. It probably is Hannah. I don't know.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I was like, have I been saying the name Hannah wrong my entire life?
I don't know how to pronounce these fantasy names, Scott. These made up names. So he makes his way to the cafeteria where Victoria and Tattletale are having a pleasant coffee chat. And again, I want to emphasize here, Chevalier is not wearing a mask. In fact, he's basically wearing PJs. Yeah,
and neither is Victoria or Tattletale, right?
Correct.
Lisa is there as a civilian.
Yeah.
The super villain.
The super villain who she's just right there with Chevalier in his PJs, Tattletale, no mask. So like we've been talking about, there's this pervasive sense that Chevalier just expects some new crisis to pop off at any moment. He's spent the last several years jumping from crisis to crisis, and it's really impossible for him to just accept that things might just be okay now.
Yeah, and it's like we talked about, this is his worst fear basically coming true. He's chained to that cycle. It's his worst fear, but something his nature cannot let himself escape from. And I like first of all, the thing is that on a certain level, he's right? Like thematically, the idea of this book and the end of this book is there's not a permanent solution to your problems. There's not an easy like go out and slay the demon solution. There's always going to be bad things out there. And even in this chapter, we see there's all this bad stuff out there still. There's stuff we have to deal with. There's crises. There's still people with powers. Like, even if the fundamental dynamic of capedom has shifted at the end of the story, there's still going to be some crazy, violent, horrible people out there that are going to use powers to hurt people. On top of the machine army, on top of this extra dimensional army that is going like of Shin and Earthsea, like, that are out there and aren't happy with you guys. There's always going to be problems.
Yeah.
Like, there's always going to be problems. There's always going to be things to do. That doesn't mean you can't make different choices, though. But he's falling right back into his pattern here away.
Yeah. Absolutely. So just, as we're making it through here, it feels like a kind of great closing note that he sees Victoria's power as being perfectly overlapping with her form, just like in almost perfect alignment with her. Yeah.
And I mean, I'd never thought about the fact that it's so thematically fitting that the shards are always like to the side or above or around the person when he sees the shadows.
Yeah.
And that really does symbolize their puppeteering of the people in some ways. But yeah, this is a perfect image. It lines up to what we saw with Victoria last chapter, and it makes you just happy for her.
Yeah.
And I love, Victoria's hands are on the coffee mug and Fragile One's hands are on Victoria's hands.
Yes.
It's wonderful.
I'm glad you pointed that out, because I for some reason didn't write that down, even though that's awesome, because it's another instance of just like the power sort of hugging her and holding her and caring for her.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the thing is he may be literally seeing her force field, but I think that it's more like this is the metaphor. This is the metaphorical representation of Victoria's power is something that is in perfect alignment with her and kind of taking care of her.
Yes.
So the two women are talking about what they would do without powers. Well, Victoria's trying to talk about that. Tattletale is just being a pain in the ass.
This is the most lovely conversation ever.
Yes.
Not only does it confirm the idea that we talked about last chapter, that Tattletale seems to be done, but it's so perfectly what their not friendship is, their non-friendship. There's like this conversation, like, it's just so, like we talked about at the beginning, that this is an epilogue now, and the metaphors are done, the themes are done, the plot is done. This is just resolution. It's just satisfaction. And that's what this chapter is. That's what this chapter really is for me.
Yeah, I agree.
And then there's this one part, Matt, that I needed to talk to you about forever.
Okay, let's do
when
it.
Tattletale tries to needle Victoria in a very Tattletale-like fashion. You couldn't even get into university, Tattletale said, and there's no university left. There's time. We'll adapt, Victoria said. Her tone was so calm. It was jarring him from his thoughts. He wanted to say something, interrupt, give her an order.
Yeah, it's so good. He's like, stop it. Stop being calm.
She just fucking needled you. And we, the reader, know that this was a very hot button issue for Victoria. Like, this is her failure to get into university is what, like, led her to the patrol block, which is what led her to Jessica, which is what led her to Breakthrough. It kind of set her on her path that she didn't get to do this one thing, and she was very self-conscious about it and mad about it and hurt that she didn't get in. And this is Lisa trying to, in her way, poke at that kind of stuff. And she just doesn't care anymore.
She doesn't care, and she's just kind of bantering and lighthearted about everything. Like she kind of throws the Tattletale's needling back at her when she says, she explicitly points out this thing that we've noticed a bunch of times where she's like, I've noticed that you have this gradation of things that you refer to me as, and it makes it explicit between them, which is hilarious.
And I think Lisa's response when she's being especially needling back to her is, if you don't stop, you'll be glory hole forever.
Yeah.
And even that doesn't seem to bother her that much anymore.
Right. Well, I just think that Victoria has kind of come to accept that this is who Tattletale is, and she's the kind. I mean, we all have that friend who crosses the line, and you kind of have to make a choice at some point. All right, is it worth it to me to put up with this person's shit because they're just not going to stop being this way? Right. And I think I've definitely made the choice in a few cases that, it is like they're going to cross the line. They're going to poke me. They're going to maybe even poke me in places where it's not nice to do that. But on the whole, it's worth it. I'm not going to write this person off because they annoy me sometimes. I think that's their relationship.
Yeah, definitely. And we didn't talk about this, but when Chevalier walked in the room, one of the ways in which he recognized Lisa immediately was like, oh, this is the person that Antares hangs out with all the time. And it's just so funny to see that from the outside perspective, right? As this, like at the beginning of the story, Lisa was like on Victoria's like top 3 list of people she fucking hates.
Yeah.
And now here at the end of it, like, they're known as the 2 people that hang out and are recognized because of their proximity to each other.
I love this. I love friendships, Scott.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
So I think Chevalier noticing that his inbox is almost empty is like the best example of show don't tell in history.
In history.
Yeah. Because I mean, we've been hitting this drum of you don't have to move on. You don't have to get right back into the swing of the constant grinding, no win, zero sum fighting. And he checks his inbox. His inbox is empty. There's nothing immediately pressing, but he still feels like he needs to tell Victoria to go do something. He's like, no, this can't be right. This can't be right. I love the just the single note of the inbox being empty.
Yeah, it's great. It's wonderful, and I wish my inbox would be empty.
Yeah, I gave up years ago.
For the first time in my life, I'm envying a cape.
Yeah, well, I mean, that just shows you how ridiculously incapable of giving up on something Chevalier is, because only some kind of superhuman would actually have an empty inbox.
Indeed.
So Victoria mentions that she won't go back with Breakthrough, which I guess makes sense given, the other comments she's made to her power and in general.
Yeah, and it's exactly like I figured, right? It's not that like Breakthrough breaking up means that these relationships are gone. These people are her family now. And she even says here she'll do anything for them. She'll do to make sure that they're okay, to make sure that they're safe. She would do anything. But they're not a team of capes anymore. That part of their lives is over. Now they're just friends and family, and that's good, I think. I like it.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So this is where I want to talk to you about time, because one of the refrains Victoria has again and again, I think it's at least 4 times in this chapter, is time. There's time, we'll adapt. We have a road forward now. I'll have a bit more time to do that. Again and again, what's on Victoria's mind is time now. This is what gives her happiness and hope and calmness. Problems aren't solved. Demons aren't slain. Demons can never really be slain, but there's time. And with time comes hope. Hope for change, hope for growth, hope to figure stuff out and move forward. And that's what she constantly says again and again throughout this chapter. And we don't have to be in her head anymore to recognize this. It's really wonderful.
Yeah. Well, she's finally seeing the future as a place for possibility and for like you said, hope. Mm-hmm. Narwhal shows up wearing a unicorn t-shirt, which is great. The pair of them talk about the situation, how things aren't perfectly rosy outside, but they are kind of in a holding pattern though.
Yeah. And it just again and again, we're hitting this beat of like, there are bad things still. And I think that's the book really wants to stress this, right? There are still bad things out there. There's still problems. This is not an ending like all problems solved. Hooray.
Yeah.
But just because there are still problems out there doesn't mean you have to face them in the exact same way.
Yep. And then the entire fucking Warden's leadership arrives in the break room. Everybody uncostumed and unmasked. We've got Hannah and Keith, not Miss Militia and Legend.
Keith, that's his name.
Yeah, that's his name.
I don't think we knew that, right?
I don't think we knew that. I also don't think we ever get... Do we get Chevalier's name? I don't think we do.
We have to.
I don't think anybody ever calls him by his name in this chapter. And he thinks of himself as... Wait, I don't think he thinks of himself at all.
Yeah, I don't know if we
I don't
know
think
his name.
No, we don't get one in this chapter. I'm not remembering it from any other chapter. So
That's crazy.
yeah,
Good catch.
yeah.
Yeah. Mystery name. I'm going to call him Jeff.
Okay, sure, fine, whatever.
Why is the name I always go to Jeff? No, hold on, let me fix this.
We do already have a Jeff. So.
Yeah, we do have a Jeff. Let's name him Steve.
Okay, Steve. Yeah, that fits Chevalier perfectly, Scott. So
yeah,
anyway.
I mean, so here's the thing. Like, I think a lot of what the story is doing here is just kind of trying to show us that maybe hints at capedom is just going to look totally different going forward, right? Like, is it going to involve costumes? Is it going to involve secret identities and special cape names? I don't know. Maybe not. I wonder, like, there's been this long-standing concept between Jessica's idea of separating cape and human and Victoria's idea of, nope, that's impossible, can't do it. And I wonder if in the end we might see, like, kind of a fusing of those two concepts in interesting ways with how capes orient themselves going forward. I don't know.
I mean, it would be interesting because like the cops and robbers, masks and all of this stuff, this was a status quo that everything fell into, but it isn't necessarily the only way that it could be. I mean, even stuff on Goddess's World, I think, was pretty different, in a bad way, of course. But I think there's definitely many other ways that the whole cape thing could look.
Yeah.
Or I should say the whole parahuman thing should look, because cape is a word that is bound up with this idea of like the superhero costume and that whole aesthetic. So,
yeah, you're right. How many of these guys actually wear capes?
I don't know if like anybody in this room does actually. It would be funny if Tattletale wore a cape though.
That would be.
So we learned that Chris attacked some folks and then backed off. There's some concern that he knew all the details of how the death sleep technology worked. And like he may have done something or he may be doing something. And there's just kind of a question mark there.
Yeah. And I don't know. Part of me wants to be worried about this. And part of me is just like totally in line with Victoria here. Is like, he thinks he's very good at hiding. He's paranoid, but he overestimates his ability. I hope he's found and realizes what he means when he is, it means when he is. I think, Matt, if I'm going to make a prediction here, we're not in the prediction business anymore, but I think we're probably going to, if not get a Chris epilogue chapter, but a chapter in which the point of view character encounters Chris in some way. I think it's just too delicious of a story element to avoid, because like seeing Chris realize that he was wrong, right?
Yeah.
Seeing Chris realize that he bet on the wrong horse, that he should have had more faith in people. And hoping that maybe that could maybe be the thing that shocks him into change, but also kind of recognizing that probably not.
Yeah, probably not. I mean,
not.
It reminds me of the Shadow Stalker epilogue, actually.
Exactly. Yeah.
Where, was that it? Yeah, I guess that was a Shadow Stalker.
It was Imp's epilogue, I believe.
I think it must have been Imp's.
Yeah.
But the point being that Shadow Stalker's role in that epilogue is to be the person who never learns.
Yep.
Yeah. So when Chevalier says, "Hey, we need to get going," Victoria tells him, "I'm out." And Chevalier is actually surprisingly pretty receptive to this sentiment.
Yeah.
That they both share this understanding that they need to, quote unquote, need to make changes, break the cycles. And he says, "Look, I want some time to think, some time to talk to people, communicate with the citizens of Gimel, and really kind of make sure we're all doing things in a conscious and intentional way before we just move on and keep doing what we were doing before."
God, I love everything about this so much, because there's this escalation, there's a beautiful escalation here where it seems like Chevalier's worst nightmare is coming true, right? Like all the wardens are there and Chevalier's like, "All right, let's do it. We got to go out there. We got to start solving the problems. Let's go." And I love the text here. He was so proud of them, like he had been before. They realized the fight they were in, the need to push forward no matter what. There was a deep, heavy sadness that came with it, that this fight went on. So like, this is literally exactly what he worried about while dreaming. And you can see why it's so hard for him, because the person he is, he sees these people that recognize we got to keep fighting. We got to push forward. We got to keep doing this. And he sees pride in that. And of course he sees pride in that. That's a heroic thing to do, to keep fighting, to keep pushing forward. But there, as he'll say a little bit later, there's a balance. There's a balance to that. And then and you're absolutely right. Victoria comes in for the first time in the book, possibly the first time in her entire life, chooses to step back and take care of herself.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful. Like, it's this wonderful, earned, joyous moment for Victoria, but this is what knocks something loose in Chevalier. This is what knocks him off of that cycle. And so when Narwhal starts echoing the same kind of sentiment that he was just thinking about, the same kind of sentiment that we've heard from heroes throughout this whole story, if everyone made that decision, we'd be lost. This idea of all or nothing, that we have to do this.
Well, even Victoria has echoed that.
Right. She said something exactly like that in the past. She's made that argument for why she needs to be out there, why she needs to be on the front lines, for why she's been upset with people when she asked them to help and they said no. She's been in Narwhal's position. Exactly. And then who says there's a middle ground? It was Chevalier. And I love how this is written here, because the quote is without any indicator of who said it, right? Unfortunately, Narwhal said, if everyone made that decision, we'd be lost. And then there's a middle ground. And I think first time you read that for a fraction of a second, you think that's Victoria, because it would make sense, right? Like, she's the one arguing against this. But it then says the voice that had stated that was Chevalier's. He fixed his eyes on the ground. And it's almost as if, because we're in Chevalier's head, technically, right?
Yeah.
It's almost as if he's surprised himself by saying it. Like, he takes a beat to recognize that it was him that said this.
Yeah, I think that this is very uncomfortable for him too. Like, that fixing your eyes on the ground is something that you do when you're nervous or uncertain or even ashamed. And, this is a super hard charging, confident leader, and he's saying something that he knows is going to be so uncharacteristic and probably not immediately popular with this circle of people that he's kind of bracing for it almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it is popular, Matt. Like, there was collectively an easing of tension. People relaxed, and he realized that they had been holding on to their own lessons, their own fears and realizations from the past evening. They were loyal enough to follow him if he asked, but they hadn't wanted it. And it's like, this is like going to Abilene, right? Like, this is, nobody wanted to do this. Nobody wanted to continue the cycle on, but they would because they're heroes. And if one person says, okay, let's do this, they're going to do it. But sometimes you have to be the person to pull a Victoria and say, I'm out.
Yeah. And
maybe you should be out too. And like, I understand why this is so difficult for Chevalier, the guy that wants to always be in the thick of things, always be helping people, always being heroic. I get it. But like, taking a breath and making some breakfast and talking about stuff does not mean you're not going to be a hero anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't mean you're not going to help and fight and try to make the world a better place. It just means that, like he said, there's a middle ground. There's a balance. Like, you don't have to rush out and do it right away. You can take a beat. You can take care of yourself. You can make some toast.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. It's what everyone really needed to hear. And I mean, it's great that this really is Chevalier's chapter. But Victoria plays this crucial role where she just kind of conveys her lesson, her moral of the story to him. And then he's able to be the leader and kind of transmit that to the other leaders, the other high ranking people here. And you get the sense that something real has happened here. Something important has changed. And that the cycles are going to be broken, hopefully.
Yeah, we talk about how brave you have to be to like walk on a battlefield against a creature that is 20 million times more powerful than you are, like he did against Behemoth, right? We talk about the bravery of that moment and how badass and wonderful it is. It's also brave to look at a bunch of heroic people and say, I can't do this.
Yeah.
and I don't want to do this anymore. And I understand that it's important, and I understand somebody needs to do it, but I can't do that. And that's brave too.
Yeah.
And we don't acknowledge that bravery enough.
Yeah. I mean, it was brave for Victoria to say I'm out, and it was brave for him to back her up.
Yep.
I think that's great. But we're almost done here. I feel like we did short shrift to the section where he was relentless, and I just wanted to say that Chevalier's power is so fun, and it's so fun to read about and to think about. And
I love it. I love, like, I swung at you with a baseball bat, but inside the baseball bat was a metal pole 30 feet long.
Yeah. Pulverized his body, and
yeah. And like he
destroyed a wall.
His shoes are so heavy that when he walks, they like break the ground.
Yeah.
They just look like tennis shoes. And he's wearing cardboard armor.
Yeah.
God, his power is so cool.
Yeah. Cardboard armor that is actually 2 inches of steel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bullet bounces off of it. It's so fun. Yeah.
It's so great. Imagine like how confusing it would be to see that.
Yeah.
To like shoot someone wearing cardboard and it bouncing off.
Yeah.
Like, God, he's so cool. I love Chevalier.
Me too. Yeah.
Good old Steve.
Yeah. I love Steve. So as the chapter wraps up, Tattletale does answer one question for them using her power. She says, the Titans weren't digging, they were etching. They were leaving behind a message for the rest of their kind.
So you want to speculate on what the heck this could mean?
Well, I mean, I just literally read what Alexandria said, which I'm scrolling up to try to find. But basically, it was an answer. It was communication. It was sending a message, and I think that message probably has something to do with. I'm just gonna go for it and say it has something to do with the themes of the story. That it's got to be something like, maybe we should just accept that we're not gonna be able to solve this entropy thing. Like maybe we can just do something else other than be obsessively trying to stave off the heat death of the universe, which like what a waste of time.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think the way it's framed here and in the early in the chapter, something was learned by Fortuna, by the shards, and they wanted to communicate that important message and answer. Probably not the answer you want, because that's not how those answers work, but the answer you've got. Something has. They've discovered something through the interaction with the humans, through what they've been through. They've discovered something important enough that they want to make sure the other entities, no matter how long into the future from now, see it. And I like that is encouraging too. Like that, like that's hope for their future as well.
Yeah.
And hopefully they'll stop being little shits. Stop being shits, entities. Just stop it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it is. Stop it. That's what the message is.
Just stop it. Yeah.
Stop it.
It is a fun, like best case scenario, if that's true, because it's like, not only did humanity defeat the shards and save the species, but they basically averted they defeated the shards wholesale. They defeated the whole program of milking the entire universe or multiverse for suffering to create learnings from conflict.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. That's a pretty good ending, if that's true.
Yeah, I mean, look, like Entities is basically Monsters Inc.
Exactly.
And they're stealing those screams from the children, and then one day one of them came along and said, "Hey, what about laughter?"
Yeah, we tried laughter.
Yeah, there's more energy there.
Yeah. It turns out that laughter reverses entropy, actually.
Yeah.
Don't know if you knew that.
Cool.
Yeah. All right.
So that's it.
Yeah, that's epilogue number 1.
How many more epilogues do you, if you had to guess, how many would you say?
Six more.
6 more. So 7 epilogues total.
7 epilogues.
That's a bold guess.
That's my guess. Yep. Lucky number 7.
All right.
All right. The discussion question from last week was, what is your favorite example of a story that didn't end up being about what you thought it would be about? First answer is from Sarah Penguin. They say Nier, not Near. They say, when I first played Nier, it seemed like a generic fantasy / action RPG as you kill monsters on your quest to rescue your daughter from the evil Shadow Lord. and then the rest of the post is spoilered. So I guess it's not about that.
Cool. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's always a problem with spoilers on these questions, but I do enjoy them because I learn a lot about other media that I haven't played yet. So
yeah,
or read yet or watched yet, whatever.
Yeah, and you know, it's fun. It's fun to read them. I just think as a policy, we try not to just spoil like everything, every show and book and game in our show. So yeah, we're gonna skip that stuff.
Sure. Yeah. Now we have Roger Dodged Lodgers. I practiced that before we started, and I didn't. I got it right then, and Roger Dodged Lodgers.
There you go.
Roger Dodged Lodgers. Anyway, they says, I love the movie From Dusk Till Dawn. It starts out as sort of a buddy movie, but changes genres hard halfway through the film. Yes, it does. Have you ever seen that movie, Matt?
No.
The George Clooney, Quentin Tarantino. Even it's a vampire movie, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be a vampire movie.
No, I've never seen it. I didn't know Quentin Tarantino was involved in that. I didn't know that. Interesting.
He was an actor in it.
Okay.
He did not write it.
Very interesting.
Direct it. Yeah. Once upon a time, Quentin Tarantino really wanted to be an actor. And that's why he puts himself in his movies, because he still wants to be an actor.
Of course he does.
But Roger also says, my favorite story that wasn't about what I thought it was about, however, is the His Dark Materials series by Philip Pullman. If you read only the first chapter of the first book and then someone tells you what the series overall is about, which relates to the third book's resolution, that person wouldn't be wrong to think it sounds like the author sent the story totally off the rails. But reading the story across all three books, it makes sense where the story goes and how it progresses.
Yeah, I've read the first one of those, and it's definitely a really strange book.
I've read all three of them, and it goes places. It goes to those places.
Uh-huh. Cool. Moving on, Gates DA says Madoka Magica, which we did a doofcast on, if people are curious. Starts out as a more conventional magical girl story, and then has multiple dark... Involuntary shudder from Scott. Then has multiple dark twists that deconstruct the genre. In the end, the genre's characteristic values are still present, and they're more powerful and authentic because the story challenged them. The author's goal was to write a heartwarming story of friendship between girls. He just decided a heart-wrenching tragedy of death and madness was the best way to do it. I like Madoka Magica, whatever the version was we saw. I agree with this. It was a very interesting deconstruction. They also say Knives Out had some brilliant twists that likewise rejects genre conventions to better embody the genre's values. Mm-hmm. I really like that phrasing.
Yes, I do too. I won't repeat my opinions on Madoka Magica, but let's move on.
Yes.
Muns for College says, I get to plug the game Disco Elysium here. There was actually 2 layers to finding out that there was more than meets the eye with this one. First is the actual base gameplay. I bought it expecting essentially a Baldur's Gate style isometric RPG in a more modern setting, with combat, varied locations, and a more eventful plot. In reality, it's basically a point-and-click adventure that works off of RPG elements, but does not have combat or classes or any of that, and it's a more contained detective story that unfolds within one general area. The second, way more important layer of this is how the game initially presents itself and how it develops over time. The game starts you out as an aging rock star looking guy waking up in a trashed hotel room, and you spend the first hours of the game having fun playing a nutcase with no memory and voices in your head, which are based on your skills, who can say crazy shit while stumbling around doing an investigation with your long-suffering partner. It's fun and funny in a kind of pathetic and endearing way, and is probably the source of 90% of the memes about the game. Then, as you make your way through the investigation, things start to shift. You learn more about the area you're investigating and how much things suck for the people there. You learn more about the political situation surrounding the murder. And you learn more about your character, who up until that point you've been playing as any other blank slate. I've heard very good things about this game, Matt, but this is like the first time I've read something about it that made me go like, yeah, I want to try that. That sounds good.
Yeah, I've had people specifically come to me and tell me that like I specifically would enjoy this game. So I'll definitely get around to it.
I think my resistance to it is I've always had a problem with the isometric Baldur's Gate style RPGs where I just could never get into them. But now I've been told that it's really not that. So yeah, now I want to try it for sure.
Yeah, I had no idea what the actual interface looked like. So whatever. Yeah, cool. Okay, Zoltron123 says their answer. They say they're kind of cheating. They say that Dungeons and Dragons was what totally upended their expectations. They say their preconceived notions of D&D were totally scrapped when they first played with a group of friends. They first thought the story and experience would be traditional fantasy setting and intrigue with dragons, orcs, elves, or whatever. They were thoroughly surprised when they enjoyed the experience immensely with some close friends. The story was incredibly fun to act out. The characters, both NPC and PC, were enjoyable, and the experience was like nothing they had ever expected. I definitely also had like a kind of prejudice and just total ignorance about D&D prior to the first time I played it, which was with you, Scott, when we were in college. And since then, I have clearly come to like the format because we did Weaver Dice Vegas, and we've done. I think you and I have been involved in a couple of D&D campaigns over the years. So
yeah, it's really fun. It's really fun, and I agree with that the perception does not match up to what it is at all. Especially since the first time I played it with some people in high school that were like really like metagamey in a way that I think just destroys the experience, because I don't actually think combat in D&D is very fun.
No.
So if you don't get into the role playing aspect of it, like,
right,
I just don't think it's that great. And for whatever reason, the first people I played with were like super into the combat part, and I was just like, this is boring. And then I played it in college with you and Michael and other Michael, and
another Michael
and David, right?
Yeah.
Or RA. Yeah. It was great.
Michael's a really good DM.
He is.
Cool.
All right. So Hobo Demon says Kill la Kill starts out as a fairly standard anime, the standard genre of transfer student upsetting the social order of their new school, the standard plot hook of their quest to avenge the death of their father, the standard metaphors for signaling social status through quality of clothing, and the established hierarchy translating directly to fighting ability, and how that plays into the unconventional stranger bringing anarchy. And then the next part was spoilered. So Kill la Kill is not that.
Yep. I haven't seen it, so
yeah, me neither.
So cool. Beard of Valor talks about Beastars. Beastars is a manga with a Netflix anime adaptation. This is long, and I know nothing about Beastars, but I'll do my best.
I know nothing about Beastars either, except that someone said it was really, really good, and then I saw it was anime and went, ugh. But maybe one day I'll watch it. Yeah.
They say they say it starts out with like a murder mystery, and then they say the setup antagonist of the first episode ends up being the main protagonist. And basically they just say it seems like there's a lot of this stuff where like you're intentionally being led to believe things that are like the opposite of what the story ends up actually being. So that sounds really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. I don't want to commit to anything, Matt. I don't want to commit publicly to anything because, anime. But right. I have heard from people that this is very good and very different in cool ways.
Well, you just let me know, Scott.
All right. I'll get right on it. Up next, we have Wanson, who basically talks about the 3-body problem series. Their TLDR is the entire third book takes the mere idea of cooperation and trust between different spacefaring species, then rips it apart, stuffs it in its mouth, shits out the remains, dries and pulverizes the excrement, then shoots the dust into the nearest black hole. Wow.
Yeah.
This is a series that you and I read the first of for a book club, and I didn't love it. But you went on and read the next two, right?
No, I read the next. I read the second book.
Okay, so you haven't read the third yet.
And I did enjoy it. I don't really have a reason why I didn't read the third one yet. I intend to. So I haven't read the third book, which is the one he's talking about here. Actually, Wanson does point out that pretty much every book is kind of a wild ride where it's never really about what you thought it was going to be about. Just because like the first book is basically this like murder mystery type thing that then turns into something involving aliens that it's just completely out of left field.
Wow.
I mean, I even regret saying that, right? Because like you've read the first book, you get that like it plays the aliens thing so close to the chest that by the time it gets there, you're like, what? Aliens? Yeah.
Except on the back cover, which I think we talked about in the book club, where we were like, why did the summary of this book spoil the conceit?
Yeah. Yeah, seriously.
Which we have just also done. So
we
sorry,
have,
everyone.
but yeah, I know, bad us. But yeah, those books are quite a wild ride. The second one does the same thing where it's just constantly twisting and turning, and you have no idea where it's going. So yeah.
I liked talking about that book way more than I liked reading it, and I think I just need to get over myself and give the next two a try, because I'm sure they'll be fascinating to think about. I think just the actual reading was rough for me.
I think that the character in the first one was a bit of a cipher, and the character in the second one is more interesting to me, at least. So
okay, cool.
Yeah. Extas Nouveau says The Wandering Inn, what started as a somewhat cutesy tale about a young woman stranded in an RPG world, transformed several million words later into a play about the influx of earthly knowledge into that world, in several story strands of interesting takes of that idea and goblin society. So, I've heard of The Wandering Inn. It's another one of those web serial things.
Yeah, those web serials.
Yeah,
whatever those.
I don't know. I'm a little ambivalent about the whole format, but
it's like Fruit Loops, and Lucky Charms. Cause cereals.
I remember asking my mom when I was like literally 5, like, what is a serial killer? Like, do they kill? I don't understand the relationship between that and breakfast cereal.
Yeah, my wife asked me the same question when she was 29. So.
Okay, all right.
There's a place in London called the Serial Killer Cafe. Only it's spelled like breakfast cereal, and that's when she realized that cereal and cereal were two different words.
Indeed. Okay. Well, good story.
I'm sorry. She doesn't listen to this. It's fine. Up next, we have Sympathy for Accord, who says, maybe it's a cheat answer, but as someone who enjoys writing, I'm continually surprised by how my own stories seem to run away from me. I'm sure others can relate, whether it's themes, characterization, major plot points, or even trivial details about how a chapter is supposed to unfold. No amount of planning is enough. If I'm writing and I happen upon a better path forward, one that doesn't completely derail my story, I'm probably going to take it. You can build a world, develop the characters, set plots in motion, and with enough momentum, the story starts to write itself. It's incredibly rewarding. It's why I fell in love with writing in the first place, and it's why I'll never stop. Yeah, I don't think that's a cheat answer. I think that's a great answer. I love that. I
feel the same. I mean, I think I may have told this story before, but like I the longest thing I've ever written was, basically a novel. Mm-hmm. I had this idea in mind the entire time I was writing it about where it would end. And as I got to that point, I was just like, no, this is just wrong. Like, these characters wouldn't make this choice. This just feels entirely wrong. And they made a choice that made the whole story like make sense. And I didn't know that's the story I was telling. It was amazing.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I love it. Books are cool.
Yes, they are. Sanity Planet says they're going with Freaks. They say the movie begins with a little girl who is kept trapped in a filthy rundown house by her paranoid father, who insists that if she goes outside, people will try to kill her. The movie sets up the expectation that it will be a horror film or a psychological thriller with the father as the antagonist, and it leaves you asking what the fuck is going on over and over throughout the first 20 minutes or so. Then the answers to those mysteries are gradually revealed, along with several other cool twists, and the movie takes a sharp turn into a completely different genre. All the answers are completely satisfying, and all the bizarre stuff from the beginning eventually makes perfect sense. Worm fans will love this movie, so I hope you check it out.
Yeah, I added that to my list on Netflix when it came out, and I have yet to actually get into it. But I've heard good things, so cool. I want to try it out eventually. That's cool. All right, so that's it, right?
Yeah, that's it for the questions.
All right.
So the discussion question for next week is, why epilogues?
Why epilogues? And what I mean from this is, what are epilogues and why do we have them? Basically, I just want to explore the concept of what an epilogue is. It is a thing on the end of the story. What function do you think it serves? How do you think it is important to an ongoing story? I mean, we've seen in Wildbow's writing, every single one of his story has an epilogue. Some writers have them, some writers don't. Why epilogues? Why? Why epilogues?
Indeed.
Why for out thou epilogues?
Perfect. All right.
Matt asked me to explain what I meant, and that was my attempt.
That's good.
So I hope you all have gotten it.
It's great. I get it. I have thoughts.
Okay.
All right, Scott. March's Madness Championship. What's up?
I think it is very fitting, Matt, that here on the last non-epilogue chapter of the book, we are also going to crown a champion of March's Madness. It's exciting. It's fitting. It works. So we had here the championship round was, of course, Victoria Dallin versus Lisa Wilborn. I think I did not expect Lisa to make it this far. I really didn't. I thought she would do well. She always does well. I think there were some very key moments in the book that happened in the middle of this conversation, this tournament rather, that boosted her up in certain ways. But here she is. But did she win? I don't know. Let's find out. First, let's read some comments from Ponage Hobo, who says, a vote for Vicky is a vote for all her personalities. You can't beat that for value.
It's fair.
Chubster says, being colorblind means I see strange things sometimes in color, and gold is sometimes a bloody, broody yellow, and Tattletale is purple. Definitely not sweet, and Terry's all the way. Okay, Chubster. And we have Cage Glory that says, don't mind me just upvoting Ashtoria again. So a lot of Vicky votes there, not a lot of Lisa votes. Matt, who is the champion of March's Madness 2020?
I can't actually see that on my interface for some reason, so you're going to have to tell me.
I will tell you. The champion of March's Madness 2020 is by... I was trying to do math, but with 59.48% of the vote, Victoria Dallin has won the tournament. She wins 59.48% to 40.52%. Tattletale gets a little over 40% of the vote, but Victoria wins with just a little under 60%. Resounding.
Yeah. Fitting. Very fitting. I mean, yeah. I'm glad, right? She deserves it. She deserves it.
She does. She does. And that makes 2 tournaments in a row in which our protagonists have won the tournament. Which, part of me is yeah, that makes sense. But also part of me is surprised because, if you ask, fandoms who their favorite character from a story is, it usually isn't the protagonist, I feel. I feel like the protagonist is usually one of the least popular characters, and it's one of the characters in the protagonist's group.
That's true. Nobody's favorite character is Jon Snow. Nobody's favorite character is Randall Thor.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think maybe Wildbow's books are not unique because I'm sure there's other books in which that's true. But
I think I like both. But yeah, no, I see your point. That's funny. Yeah.
But so congratulations, Victoria. Thank you, everyone who participated in the tournament. I had so much fun with it. I hope you guys had so much fun with it. I don't know what the heck we're going to do next year. Who knows what'll be happening then.
Maybe it'll be a Victoria versus Taylor head-to-head.
Oh, head-to-head. I like it.
Did we read the bronze matchup?
Not yet. I was just getting to that.
Okay, sorry.
So the bronze matchup was between Precipice and Swan Song, are two characters that I was pretty sure were going to make it to the finals, are here duking it out for third place. So this was a very, very tight matchup, Matt. Very tight. Let's see what some of the comments say before we read the winner. We have Misfist here who says, I'm normally all in for Rain, but Ashley hit me in the recency bias and made me reread Eclipse again, so she gets my vote. All right. And then we have Sympathy for Accord who says, countdown from 100, Ashley. You're done.
I love that.
And Ponage says, what in the great flavored hell is going on here? How come my boy Rain isn't fighting for first place?
Well,
good question. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. And the winner of third place is Precipice. He has won with 52.66% of the vote to 47.34% of the vote. Rain beats Ashley. Very surprised.
I am shocked.
And actually, it was kind of crazy because I can see the results as they're coming in and I check it throughout the week. Early voting, Ashley was ahead. It was 60-40. And then as the week went on, the Rain gang just slowly went forward and it ended up being, I think it's it's like 40 votes between them. It's very close, but Rain overtook Ashley and never looked back. And Rain wins third place. So sorry, Ashley, fourth place for you.
This is all sort of fitting poetically, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I so much fun. So that's March's Madness. That's it. It's over.
Awesome.
Once again.
Yeah. Can't wait for next March when everything goes mad again.
Yeah. This is the craziest March ever.
It's true. This is very mad March.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Well, thanks for doing that, Scott. I mean, everybody always enjoys that. I always enjoy that. Scott is the one who does all of the work required for that. So everyone, please thank him specifically.
I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun.
It's a good idea. All right.
So that's the cool thing about it, actually. Sorry I know you were moving on, but the cool thing about it is it's really hard the first week, and then it gets exponentially easier.
Yeah. Not a lot of tasks like that, are there?
It's not exponential. That's
geometrically.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, that's all we've got for you this week on We've Got Ward. You guys are all part of this show, so feel free to provide us with advice, questions, or thoughts on this week's reading.
You could reach us via email at gotwormpod@gmail.com or over on our Twitter account at gotwormpod. My personal Twitter is at scottdaily85, and Matt's is at moreidin L.
That's the correct pronunciation. You're the first one to ever do it. If you're not already subscribed to We've Got Ward, we strongly recommend you do so you never miss one of the last couple of episodes here.
Yeah.
You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else in the world you can listen to podcasts.
And you can find this and all the other podcasts we do over at our website, doofmedia.com. That's where you can find the Doofcast, which this week will be having Matt and I do an episode on Castlevania, the anime. The first season.
On Netflix.
Yep. It's going to be great.
That's right, Scott.
You can tell I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. If you like, for example, the tone that we just struck there, and you want to support us in that sort of thing, then consider donating to our Patreon account at patreon.com/doofmedia. Of course, that also supports all the other shows on the Doof Network, including this one. Supporting us for the $5 per month level gives you the ability to vote in our... Jesus Christ, Scott, what the hell is happening?
I didn't touch any of that. That's not me. Don't blame me for that.
The script has been mangled in a way that is just quite humorous, actually. Anyway, you'll get access to the Discord, the fan art contest, and costume contest voting, and really any other voting that comes up. Sometimes we have other contests like the Doof the Right Thing challenge. And of course the Discord chat, which is just as lively as ever these days.
Yeah. And that the $5 level that Matt said, but the script ruined, was for our Doof and Chill episodes, of which we are doing one this Friday night. Matt and I are going to be racing Elliot and Ruben in Portal 2 co-op, and it's going to be really fun. So
yeah,
there's still time to get in on that action because it's gonna be a good time.
I can't wait for that.
None of these jokers have played Portal at all before, and I've never played the co-op, so it's gonna be 4 people that know nothing about any of these puzzles trying to do them as quickly as possible.
I can't wait. Yeah, and of course, head on over to Wildbow's Patreon too, patreon.com/Wildbow, and donate to him as well. This is his world. We are just playing in it. This week, special thanks to new patrons, Bedoofs, Lucalis, Sylphrania, and Cameron C. Welcome. We hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, I know for a fact that Sylphrania will not be hearing this welcome, because Sylphrania actually joined us from book club, which is like the first time that's happened, that we had a new patron just come from book club, which
awesome.
Is wonderful and exciting, and I love it. And a cool thing happened, folks, which is Sylphrania was in our Discord for like 10 minutes, and then everyone made them read Worm, and now they're doing a live read of Worm in the Discord.
Yeah.
So that's what happens when people outside of this community join us.
Yep.
Is they're immediately told they must go read Worm, and they do it. They go do it.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. It's very exciting to see. So thank you, Sylphrania. Thank you, everyone. We really, really appreciate it. it means the world to us that we've been doing this thing. It's 2.5 years on this show, Matt, just this show, not the whole year show we did before this one. It's been 2.5 years.
Oh my God. Holy shit.
And you guys have stuck with us throughout all of it. And we appreciate it so much.
Yeah. Yeah. So, see you in like 5 years, Silfrania, when you actually get to this episode.
Yeah. It's going to be so exciting when you hear this.
Yeah.
All right. And of course, if you cannot afford to donate right now, that is absolutely okay. You can help us out by sharing our network, sharing Worm with people, just like Silfrania got done to them in our Discord. And you can leave us ratings and reviews over on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher. Those still help us even here at the end, because let me tell you, there are still people finding this podcast and experiencing it for the first time. We get emails all the time. We got an email the other day from someone who told us why I was wrong about containment foam.
Uh-huh.
I didn't even remember what I said about containment foam, but you're probably right. I'm usually wrong about things.
Yeah, you'll never
it's
live
still
it
overpowered, down. Though. It's still overpowered.
It is. I mean, that's why it's not in this story, is because Dragon couldn't afford to let it fall into the hands of the machine army, so she just stopped making it.
Yeah, the only way to deal with its power is to just remove it from the entire world forever.
Or maybe she's been saving it up, and like that's the solution to the end here, is like they just douse the entire countryside with it.
I mean, that's clearly what Fortuna had the Titans etch into the crystal, right?
Yeah.
More foam.
Yeah. Yeah, just containment foam.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all we've got for you this week. Next week, more epilogues.
Maybe the end. I don't know.
Yeah, possibly.